Nice to meet you all. My name is Seth. I'm going to just share my screen with you. I've got an old-fashioned presentation. Okay, so my name is Seth Honor. I run Collider, which is a studio in the southwest of the UK. We're a production studio. We make kind of live performance, installation, and digital. And today I just wanted to talk about how we are using digital to pivot some of our work. This is the money. It's an indoor game which the audience play. We are planning to do this sometime in the next 12 months. So like everybody, we had a massive international tour of work that's been cancelled, but we do imagine that we may be able to do this in a socially distanced way. It will change the flow of the game slightly, but we are also going to digitally live stream it and broadcast it. So, but the important thing to say is the watching audience won't have any interaction in the game. This is a project that In Situ supported called Pig. We've got one pig in Australia and one in Europe at the moment. It was due to be in Sydney in April and of course got cancelled. You can see that this has huge social distancing issues for us, and it has cash in it. So it invites the audience, the general public, to put cash into it and to take it out. So there's a lot of touch, and cash is a massive virus bridge. And as cash disappears out of society because it's a virus bridge, that will be a real challenge for this piece of work. We are working about how we change the artwork. Whatever we do in this situation, it will significantly change the artwork, what we do here, and we probably won't use digital to do that. The project I really wanted to talk about was this one, or a version of this one that we pivoted. So robot selfie, on the wall there is a XY polograph robot that draws pictures on that wall. We have a camera which will photograph the public. This is just received Without Walls R&D money, so we can now develop that robot. But in lockdown, we pivoted this because we just wanted to run at doing artworks. I think we recognized that the best thing we could possibly do is run as hard as we can at making things happen. And so we are talking with partners in Italy and in the UK and in America about doing a version of this where we have robots indoors. So this is in Bassa in Milan. And the idea is that the audience can go onto a web app. They can get the AI that we've built to draw their portrait, and then they can submit their portrait. So it's kind of quite fun. They can submit their portrait to us, and then we send it off to these robots in an empty space in Milan in order to have it draw a massive mural of these strangers side by side. It makes the project very cheap, so we removed money from the equation quite early on in this process in order to try and get it across the line. I think what we found is that we can do like 98% of this project we can do. To get it that last 2%, actually to land it, is really difficult. And I don't know if other people are finding that at the moment, but actually the context in which things land is very, very boggy. It's very, very turbulent for people of the world. We're doing another project which has a digital interface, which I can't talk to you about, which is a kind of major installation in the centre of London, hopefully in August, but it's embargoed at the moment. So we're using digital not just as broadcast in this moment, but as a way of inviting our audiences to participate in the work that we're making and the work that they're making. And I just wanted to share a few kind of reflections on that. The inequality, so Martin spoke about inequality really well, and I think my point would be that it was already there. We've just been thrown into this incredibly stark sort of contrast where the fissures of inequality are suddenly very present. To that end, risk is not equal. So there are many, many risks that we're kind of facing, both in terms of economic or in terms of personal risk or in terms of health risk, but they're not equal. And so we're dealing with a very complicated landscape in terms of landing artworks. However, there is a leveling up. I've really noticed, especially with the project that we're doing in London, this Zoom window equalizes us to some extent. And actually it means that we no longer have to travel to London to have an hour's meeting. We can use a telephone like the old days. And actually we're no longer a kind of parochial Southwest company. There's a greater will for our content and the ability to pay for it. There's a deep concern that our business model relies on buyers around the world to buy our product. And actually, although they're really interested in the kind of content of the work we're making, they're less able to risk money at the moment. So even if they have it, they don't risk it. And a lot don't have it, of course, and a lot of those big partners don't have it. Literally where our audience is. I'd really love to see a version of James's audience tracker for like the current experience of art, whether it's through digital or not, because literally where are they and what are they doing? We talk about making interruptive gifts at Collider. So we interrupt the flow of audiences. We're so used to be able to see the body language of our audience, the attention, see, like you can stand and watch, like James says, and see people moving around, and you get a lot of feedback from that. We can't do that, so we have to read in a different way. And then when you do find them, they're very screen fatigued. So making sure not just to assume just because you're broadcasting something, people are going to watch it. And then I'd just like to end with a question, which is, where is public space now?
So yeah, I've been working as an artist now for 20 odd years. I'm based in Bristol, but work sort of making outdoor artworks. Sometimes the artworks exist indoors as well. I'm going to share my screen. I've been trying to create artwork at the same time as, educate my young children. It's always been a lot of fun. It's a bit of a challenge. Let's see if we can share that one. There we go. Sorry, a bit of a mess, isn't it? There we are. There we go. So this is been doing this for a while, but I was going to quickly run through right at the beginning of the pandemic. I was asked to make a sculpture of the virus itself. I've been making these glass virus sculptures for over sort of 15, 20 years. And I created a coronavirus, and it was, it suddenly led, the pandemic led to a large interest in virology. So that's been really interesting. Not that we can make any more glass sculptures because the glass studio is closed anyway because of that. But I've, there we are. There we are. So this is a new artwork I've been working on, and somehow the focus of creating a new artwork has sort of helped keep me sane a little bit. And this is an artwork that was originally planned for Weston-super-Mare in sort of February time. It was an artwork for the sort of NHS Health Weekender. And I was going to create this sort of an array of flags denoting, well, there's 120 flags to denote there's 120,000 people that have died as a consequence of austerity. But obviously, this exhibition was cancelled. And then I thought, actually, this artwork, we can kind of pivot this artwork, and actually maybe it'll be interesting in terms of create it as a temporary touring memorial for about the pandemic. So it's a bit like some of the other artworks I make in that it's an installation for people to explore. in a socially distant, sort of safe way, but also acts as a venue. So I'm beginning to tour this project. It's going to go over to it's going over to Antwerp first. I'll be launching this at the beginning of August. And then from Antwerp, it's going over to the Greenwich and Docklands Festival, and then down to Bournemouth, and then it'll tour the UK, hopefully, to act as a temporary memorial to the people who've died, and a sort of thanks and a tribute to all the NHS workers who've risked their lives as a consequence of the pandemic. But it's also a venue for the festivals to program events beneath it. So we might have choirs performing at dawn, perhaps. We might have some sort of ceremonies. You know, there's lots of people who've died and they've not been given proper funerals. So there might be an opportunity there for sort of temporary memorial artworks, memorial events to take place. There could be poetry readings, concerts, that kind of thing. So there's a space there for other people to be creative, which I try to make artworks that do that. The other artwork I've created during this pandemic is a project called Of Earth and Sky. So we're going to be installing about 25 locations across Gloucester. There'll be poetry in all the parks, and the poetry will be created through workshops with the community and online submissions. And the poetry, will be across. I think we've appreciated our green spaces and parks now in a way that we hadn't before. And there'll be sort of standing up letters in some of the locations, as well as this poetry printed onto the grass. So that's going to be launching in the next month or so, something like that. So that's pretty good. And you know, my art practice is incredibly diverse anyway. So I think curators have said, "Oh, what can we do?" And I've got a project called The Lullaby, where we play music to children in their homes at dusk by strapping lights onto bikes with speakers, and we deliver a really nice sort of lullaby to all those kids by going up and down all the back streets of the city. An artwork. There's this sort of very precious moment when you're reading a story to your kids and putting them to bed, a very fragile and beautiful moment. And I like the idea of sort of delivering an artwork specifically to that community. So the Lullaby has been touring for several years anyway. See if I might turn this volume down, you get a sense of it. But yeah, it's very beautiful. So the Lullaby is probably going to be performed in Greenwich and Docklands, perhaps, festival. We're doing a call out for local lullaby songs that will be kind of recorded and then composed into a musical score. So this lullaby will be delivered directly to people's homes. So that's a very nice thing. And it's quite, sort of socially distanced and can be done in a sort of safe way. So that's really nice. So that project, will also be going up to the Freedom Festival up in Hull. And then finally, I've got a project called the Sky Orchestra, which toured for about 10 years, that involves playing music to affect people's dreams in the early mornings by strapping speakers onto hot air balloons. And we take off at about 6 in the morning and fly over cities, playing music down into people's homes, into their bedrooms. And we launched the Sydney Festival with that, and we flew for the RSC, and we flew over London for the Olympics as well. So I'm planning to do a performance over Bristol in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. And I'm working with the Bristol Old Vic. It's interesting, you know, Bristol Old Vic has obviously been shut and closed. And they've never contacted me before, even though we're in the same city. And then as soon as the lockdown happens and they realise they can't do anything, they give me a call. So we've commissioned sort of musicians from around the city to create a new composition that will be performed from Out of the Sky in the next 3 weeks or so. We can't announce where we're going to take off. We don't want the public turning up to watch us. but will fly over their houses at dawn. Yeah, the other thing I should say is of Earth and Sky, back to that project, was, has had some development funding and support from In Situ. So I've been very grateful for their support for that. I think that's it for me. It's obviously been an incredibly crazy time. But yeah, I suppose as an artist, we're used to adapting and changing and pivoting, as you say. All right, thank you. I'm just going to try and stop share. There we are. There we go. Yeah, so it's obviously been a crazy time and very traumatic. Our government have done a really bad job at dealing with this pandemic. We've got over 60,000 people that have been killed. So I'm very angry about it. And it's how artistically we respond to that is a difficult situation. I think it's going to take decades for us to sort of come to terms with it somehow. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
The project I'm going to talk about is interesting because it crosses quite a lot of the things that have been talked around this morning. It's nice to talk about something real. If you want to, while I'm speaking, go out and look at any images of the work I'm talking about, you can go to approxima.co.uk, and that's APROXIMA. I was helping SWG3, which is an arts venue, music venue in Glasgow, to develop a piece of derelict land, an outdoor space they have, into a long-term public garden. I've worked a lot with nature, and I've worked a lot with food growing over the last 20 years. It's something I'm very passionate about, finding interesting ways to work with something very useful, such as growing and eating food. Obviously, when this all started, that project closed down very quickly. We were due to animate that space with 100 local people, bringing bags of potatoes onto the site and developing a simple growing platform to start turning that derelict space into something meaningful and productive. So instead I thought, well, either I'm going to lose this completely, or again, as we've all talked about, adapting, what can we do on a really, really local level? And so I just thought, well, who's in my street? Who's in this neighborhood? I live in a little place called Kelvindale, opposite Gart Naval Hospital. And I found Fee Houston, who's a costume maker, and Sue Green, who's a seamstress, and Eloise, who was in my twin daughter's class, who'd done fashion. Iqbal from Middlesex managed to get hundreds of pieces of coloured hessian sent up from London free of charge. And for 2 weeks, we made growing bags, beautiful coloured growing bags. And by that, I mean, it was almost like a sort of sweatshop in Kelvindale. Everyone worked kind of 3-4 hours a day. And my partner, my girls, cutting cloth, stitching. We got 2.5 tons of soil delivered into the street, and then with various people coming around every day or two, began to fill those bags with soil and potatoes sent over from a farm in Northern Ireland, in County Down. So 150 grow bags, all full of 3 or 4 potatoes seeded, and then using wheelbarrows. I think it was probably in April, so really just a few weeks after the start of lockdown. On one day, we wheeled all those potatoes down the street, and I'd gone and knocked on the doors of every house in the street, and 30 out of 33 houses took the grow bags, put them onto their front doorsteps, and we started that process of growing food collectively down the street. It was interesting for me. It was very important that it was a real thing that happened in real time. So it involved real conversations with people. Doing the wheelbarrowing involved choreography, and everyone came out onto the street, and then we moved them down. People came and got the potatoes, put them up onto their doorsteps. And in terms of a digital interplay, we filmed that with a young filmmaker, Michael Hunter, and that film of doing the whole thing from the start through to the end of, we did a sort of David Lynch drive-by at the end where everyone stood on their doorsteps with their coloured bags going down their steps, and the film just moved slowly down the street with everyone just waving to the camera, something very, very simple. But that 2.5-minute film went on to have 100,000 views, I think because it struck a chord with people. It did that without mainstream publicity, but just by word of mouth. And for me, it was important that the film was well made in its own right and would stand up as an experience, but it had to be about something real, which was that communication and that sharing on a local level. It's been a good experience because it's brought the street together. We've now got our own WhatsApp and growing group in the street. There are 20 families in Possil who we provided potatoes to carry on. Possil, we quite tough area in Glasgow, and people who live around the venue, I supported with individual sacks going to them so they could grow them in flats and on the edge of more urban areas. So in 2 months' time, we're going to take all the potatoes. People can keep a third for themselves, and we're going to go back to SWG3, which has got an outside yard. Set up a chip shop there and feed Glasgow chips for the weekend. So a free experience of sharing that food, so that the growing itself is then an act of giving. So you can keep a bit for yourself, but the idea is to give something back to the city. And that to me, again, felt very important. It wasn't just a kind of selfish act in a nice area where, you know, people have got gardens and have got access to green space, but that it should be about doing something which you can give back to people. There's no doubt it is, we've talked about, it's a feel-good project. There's no doubt about that. It is something that's made people feel good. A lot of people come walking down the street to look at it because the typology of it, where the art comes in, is that having coloured bags is very different to the normal food growing language, which is sort of really dark greens and really boring. And we wanted to do something that felt vibrant. So as you walk down the street now, you see all of these coloured dots down the doorsteps, and it gives somehow a sense of hope. All the green shoots coming out from the potato bags represents growth at a time where the natural world is still replicating in a good way beyond us completely fucking it up. And I suppose you do hold on to these things that I suppose literally and metaphorically give us a sense that you can still change things for the good. I am interested that, I suppose, as artists, we kind of, if we can, not use our skills in the normal ways we did before, that we, I guess, do things that are useful. And I think this thing of operating on a really hyper local level and using your skills and your imagination where you can in your street or in your neighborhood when you can't go wider is really interesting. Building relationships with people who normally wouldn't have anything to do with art, that is powerful. It's a good lesson for you. It's a lesson in humility. People may not be interested in your interests, but there are ways of having real communication that can transcend these times. So when we haven't been able to travel wider and work wider, I think it's really great to focus in. It's not a money-making exercise. I haven't earned anything from it, but I sort of don't care, because it just has, it's felt good to do anyway. And I kind of hope we can maybe take that out onto a wider scale. I do think food growing is a beautiful and very creative way to bring people together. It's also slow. It takes place over 3-4 months. And yeah, chips are a Scottish passion, so it's nice to be able to have some really good, indulgent, unhealthy food at the end of all of this. So I think that thing, talking about the digital versus the non-digital, I think it's very interesting to do stuff in real time with real people, and then think of ways of documenting that work, but very powerfully. As you say, it's not interesting to make bad television. There's a million dull concerts to watch online that ultimately aren't that interesting unless you're a massive fan. So I think it's important that the work that we put online has really good quality and is short and edited in a way that works with the attention span, which is shorter for a lot of online work. Anyway, sorry I screwed up my digital interface with you all at the beginning of this, but good luck to everyone. It's been a very nice experience to hear everyone's voices. Good luck.
Hey everyone, I'm Angie Dyke from Mischief Labar, and I'm just going to talk about how it has been generally for us. At Mischief, we've been lucky really under the circumstances, because over the last few years we've gone through a lot of changes, scaling down due to loss of funding, loss of staff, and obviously the wider commercial climate. I did spend most of last year on sabbatical, traveling and building relationships abroad, and I officially returned to work on April the 1st. Staffing wise, COVID was not a problem really, because there was just me and 2 freelance staff people. So we've been working from home, although we do have access to the workspace. The first few weeks of lockdown were obviously difficult for all of us, trying to understand the news, the implications, how to continue, how to live, how to still value art and not stop and retrain as a nurse. We had a lot of reporting and tying things up so that we could get resources in, and we were really lucky to have had this. The first few weeks also involved learning about this new tool, Zoom, and then being able to access all the theatre, outdoor and public arts meetings across the UK and beyond. Theatre and events became increasingly bleaker, but the outdoor arts world, which is not big business, began to show glimmers of hope and optimism. It was also amazing to be able to come together in your own sector in this way, rather than feeling a bit of an add-on in Scotland to theatre. So it's been amazing, like mixing across the whole of the country and also Europe. Brilliantly for us, our application to Creative Scotland for our Women in Cosmology project, highlighting the achievements of women who have been prolific in the research and understanding of stars, galaxies and space travel, but whose work and names have been largely unrecognised, was successful. In order to receive the money, we had to make a COVID response report. Effectively, a 6-month project had to be spread over about 10 months, as the delivery of the performance will now not happen until spring 21. We are working with 8 women artists who will create multidisciplinary artworks for an outdoor walkabout performance featuring 2 female protagonists, one focusing on the past and one on the future. There are quite a few things that need to change in how the audience engages, as it is a very tactile project. The plan was also that it would be compact and could travel by train. But things do need to change, and although the essence will be the same, it will be created more modularly than collaboratively, and the setup will change. Our concern, like everyone, is for the audience, but we need to design it with the safety of the performers at its core. It also needs to be adaptable for future performance when restrictions will be different. It's about travel in space, where protective clothing from the atmosphere is always worn. So we will not need to be compromised by the situation, but merely play around with it. We're also very lucky to be in receipt of end of project funding, so we are proposing to make a number of suitable or existing performances available for free to Glasgow or Glasgow City Council if they want them from the autumn or winter, or really whenever is possible. At Mischief, we wish to support freelance performers and artists wherever possible. We hope to be able to encourage younger generations and appreciate how difficult it is at this time. We're hoping to create a mentoring project or a mentoring program in outdoor working, and are about to begin researching what it is people might want and how we can best support them. We do also have a large space which people can use. I'm also part of Articulation Scotland, a voluntary run organisation representing us who work in outdoors performance, circus and physical theatre. We've been running various Zoom sessions and pushing our profile and our importance within the arts and culture bodies in Scotland so that our voice is heard. Personally, I'm not looking to further develop, personally I am looking to further develop my own solo or small scale work outside and with the public, both in Scotland, Europe and beyond. Very similar to the Mischief ethos, but with more of an emphasis on physicality rather than language. I've been having some forays with characters outside in Glasgow, roundabout and Glasgow Green, etc. during lockdown, and you may even spot one of them later today. I'm also looking at ideas around making a distance social a promenade piece for 4 people at a time. But currently I'm organising a funeral for next week in England, outdoors for 40 people and in a pub with a garden for 80. So I'm learning what the restrictions are firsthand, but also what the possibilities are.
Hi everyone, my name is Marcelo, and I'm gonna share my screen. There's a couple of things that we'll take a look at on my web browser via Chrome, which now has about 1,000 tabs open because I've been opening all the links on the chat. In any case, I run Applied Live Art Studio, and we do all sorts of different types of socially engaged practice. I'm going to be talking mostly about the response work that I've been doing over the last couple of months. I'll just really quickly share a project that I creaed as part of Freedom Festival, which is the print shop Rise Up, and then went to Kelburn Garden Party with UZ Arts, which was about slogan making and creating t-shirts. All of the work that's made is around arts and social engagement and how do we respond to society in a place that really is able to examine social justice in the times that we live in, but through a lens of exciting participatory practice. I don't want to be preachy, and I don't want to necessarily think about the heavy topics because we live them every day. And I think there's a real push towards the celebratory, which is super important. But actually, one of the things that I've found really important is how do we talk about the really difficult topics publicly together through participatory work, and potentially use the arts to problem solve, so that cultural production is really a way that we can understand who we are together. I've done a lot of work around end of life, and have worked with a hospice in South London. And one of the first things that happened was thinking about how we can respond to patients in the hospice, as well as community members who were isolated. The first thing that happened is what we're doing now. Everybody went on Zoom, streaming on Facebook Live workshops. And actually one of the things I noted was that a lot of the vulnerable people I work with in communities either don't have broadband, they can't see, they don't have smartphones, and all this digital technology may be really great for us, but it's not great for everybody. So the first thing that I designed was this magazine that went to print. It was part of the Creative Neighborhoods Project, which is a project that I run in South London. This project specifically is about how we can talk about death in the community, partially because we have an aging population in Europe, in the UK, and we don't have the resources to take care of that, the baby boomers as they reach the end of their life. So how can we have a better way to talk about death in the context of life? This magazine went out to about 500 isolated patients and community members, and it was very simple. What was inside of it was, oh, and it's not scrolling at the moment, but what was inside of it was different ways in which you could do art at home activities with things that you might have in your house. And that you would get a printed magazine, and it would be really simple, and you could engage with it. And that had incredible feedback. I got really good feedback from a lot of people, including a lot of the clinical therapists that were working with people out there, in terms of being able to maintain creativity and engagement. As you know, there's a lot of organizations out there that are doing things like this. But my sense was that if you added up a lot of the hits that were happening in the Zoom meetings and on the Facebook Live, and you counted the amount, how many people engaged with this magazine, it would definitely outnumber it. So there's something really important about the haptic and the tactile, and how do we keep those things alive when we start the push into the digital. One of the other things I've been working with is a partnership with Access Web, and developing a couple of their resources, and one of them is the Social Art Library. The sense was that there's a lot of response work. There was almost an obsession to respond. And it felt also really important to maybe understand how we are just living the trauma. And I think there's a real tension there that's worth unpacking a bit later when I'm chairing the group around publicly engaged work is where do we respond and where do we just be with the trauma that we're living in at the moment. Now, Social Art Library is in essence starting now as a place to collect the response work that people are doing. There is incredible work happening everywhere. We're looking at examples of it now. I come across it a lot through the Social Art Network, which I help chair. I'll talk about that in a moment. But what we need is also to remember to collect that work. Why is that important? Because often when we go into a red alert mode, which we have now been in not only for months, but potentially for years. One of the questions I love asking people whenever I'm with a big group of people is, when do you remember the last time you woke up and we were not in a moment of crisis? Right now, Brexit seems boring compared to what we're living through. It was all we lived through for so many years. We, thankfully, the big social justice movement that's happening around Black Lives Matter is reminding us that there is a lot to fix still. While we're doing the work to fix it, we have to remember how we collect it. Why is that important? How is it important to collect and represent? Because then we get to build the history. And in 100 years' time, when we look back at this pandemic, how are we going to understand this time? From my point of view, artists who work directly with communities within practice that's around social engagement are the ones that really have their finger on the pulse of society. And instead of just doing the work as urgent as it is, we need to understand how we represent it and how can we be creative in representing it. So that's one project that I'm working on that has been generously funded by Art Fund to create some micro commissions around there. It is not commissioning practice. It is going out there and saying, look, you're doing great work. Can you think about creative ways to archive it? And here's a bit of money to do that. The other project I'm working on is this kind of experimental project called the Social Artery. Both of these projects are not live, they're in development. The Social Artery is going to be the main platform that Access Web is putting out. And within that platform, and it's like a mashup of Facebook and LinkedIn and Google Docs and iCal and all of these stuff in one, but it is an artist-led ethical alternative to the tech giants. Let's just put in parentheses right now that there's a huge problem with tech giants. Zoom, for example, could be free for a lot of people on extended kind of webinars and things like this. They are making millions off the pandemic while also collecting lots of data, because they are collecting the data even as we speak right now. If you're not familiar with it, search it. The Social Artery is a place where I'm trying to design a way in which we can do what we're doing now, but just drop it into the artery. We can also bring in videos and live actions in which it can all be in one space. We are able to have multiple inputs and look at multiple things. I have 20 browser tabs open in my browser right now. I probably have another 10 browser windows open, each with this many things. This is how we now process information. Weirdly, we don't have a platform where we can bring all these things together. Yes, it's important to go out there and understand how to make work in the real world, but also us as artists and creative individuals should be the ones designing this technology. Instead, we are using corporate technology to try to be creative. Silicon Valley did not design Zoom for us. They designed it for corporations. So can we design something that works for us? The Artery is really cool. It's going to happen. We're developing it. But what's more important is when artists go on it, they can feedback and change it. There's nothing like that out there. And that is a big dream, but it's possible. That has been partially funded by an Arts Council emergency grant that is going to look at micro-commissioning artists to understand how participation can happen in new and innovative ways, because there is a lot of incredibly creative people out there and they don't have to work for Google. They can be working for themselves, they can be freelancing. And as we know, most artists live on the poverty line, but we are incredibly creative and we need to harness that creativity. A big part of my practice as well has been developing the Social Art Network. The Social Art Network is a UK-wide network of artists who work in social engagement. We've developed loads of different kinds of projects around that. This is a many-headed beast. We are decentralized. We are not an organization that has a registered charity or anything like that. There are hubs across the country, and it is artists who are dedicated to working with communities in collaborative practice in a lot of different forms. I tend to work in performance and installation in text, but there are all kinds of artists in that. The core and the heart of Social Art Network are the meetups, and the meetups happen across the country. There is 10 meetups now that are run either by organizations or by artists, and it's very simply a type of peer forum and peer support. But so much comes out of that. All of the main projects that we've done have come out of those meetups. At the moment, I had some funding from the Curatorial Network Grant from Art Fund to host the London meetups, which is the ones that I chair. I'm based in London, even though they're all over the place. And those meetups are happening just like this on Zoom, but they also go onto YouTube Live. So part of the meetups are broadcast on YouTube Live. They are closed captions. That is a lot about accessibility. Not everybody can join a Zoom. Not everybody wants to join a Zoom. And also making sure that things have closed captions, which is a lot of labor. But to be inclusive and to make sure that you are inclusive with your practice is labor, and it's labor that we have to do. One of the things I wanted to share is that for each of those meetups, we have this blog posts, and the blog posts have these shared Google Docs. These shared Google Docs are really important. Right now, I have 10 tabs open with links. The amount of resources I have come across in the last few months is overwhelming. I can't view it all, but I will in the long term. I will go through it. So for example, this shared Google Doc was created at the last meetup, and it was just people sharing links and sharing ideas and sharing things around the topic that we were talking about. The next few meetups that are happening, the topics are there. And it is about thinking how we maintain the radicality of the times that we're living in, and also support the artists who are doing that work across the country. In the group that I'm going to chair a bit later, I'm going to talk about what it means to maintain and foster and support those kinds of acts of radicality in these crisis times. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Zoe Castellero.
And I'm Elon Morris.
Throughout this pandemic, we've been trying to find ways to adapt our work to more audio-based work and camera work that could potentially be streamed online or even visit people's homes. This is something that I've been thinking about. Our presentation, just to say that we're hoping to adapt the work in a way that then could be, again, transformed into a live format, or into an installation, or a dance performance, or a music performance, or theatre performance. Today we'll be sharing a work in progress of our new duet that we're working on at the moment. I'd like to ask you all to use headphones if you have them available, and switch off your screen and look away from the screen. This work is created by two stories running simultaneously, and the stories are focusing on borders and travel and the memory of travel. So yeah, if you can put your headphones on and turn your camera off, that would be lovely. So we're going to share the screen and play.
Share the audio as well?
Yeah, share the audio.
How do we do that?
Hopefully that works.
Check the people.
I'm very sorry, Zoe. I'm afraid this isn't working. What we'll have to do is, can we put you into a breakout group, because we're going to have to shut this room. We're running quite late. So in a moment, I'm going to send you a message. Could you put your presentation in a breakout group, and then I'll come back to you, okay? I'll send the message to you in a moment. And could we, and just go straight on, if we can, to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Patterson. I'm Artistic Director of All or Nothing Aerial Dance Theatre based here in Scotland. Our work, we create, teach, perform and advocate for aerial arts in Scotland. I'm just going to share my screen with you because I've got just a few images to show. Here. Great. So our work ranges from small scale indoor and outdoor theatre to large scale outdoor spectacle, combining aerial arts with dance theatre and contemporary circus. And participation is a huge part of that, of our work as well. And we're always trying to create opportunities for this to happen. And just like everybody else, our whole 2020 programme was decimated at the start of April. And this weekend especially was going to be a really big weekend for the company. We had 2 projects performing, and you just see there an image in Paisley. We were going to be, I'm going to briefly chat about both the projects and the different paths they've taken. And this project that we're going to be doing in Paisley it was Colours of the Cart, and it was part of Event Scotland's Year of Coasts and Waters programme with Renfrewshire Council Events team. And it sat within a day called Small Shot Day, which is a big celebration in Paisley that happens the first Saturday of every month in July. And it's a celebration of workers' rights and the textile industry, and there's a parade and a lot of outdoor work happens about that. And we were creating a daytime outdoor performance around this area and the River Cart and the importance that it had. We had a 60-strong cast of community and professional performers, and it was going to be dance, aerial. We had kayakers we were going to choreograph on the water, and we had a crane with professional performers flying overhead. But it was cancelled, and the events team wanted to take Small Shot Day online, which is happening just now. And so our project went from dealing with this space to a very different project. We had to propose a completely different thing and use that word pivot that's been used a lot into the digital world, into connecting threads. So here we created a dance and film engagement project, and the challenge really was to we're so used to engaging physically, how can we engage with everyone virtually? And so actually we were quite blown away with the response that we had, and we've got 85 dancers. The films are being shown at 3:30, so I'm going to have to speak a bit faster. But we were still connecting to the similar groups. We commissioned music and the choreography, and if you're interested, it's on paisley.ia's website, and I'll put the link in the chat later. So the other project that was meant to be happening this weekend was performing the swings, and that was co-commissioned with Merchant City Festival and Imaginate Them Family Day. That's the Edinburgh International Children's Festival, and it was part installation, part performance, set around a giant swing set. And we had 2 swings, a 12-minute performance with 2 performers on the swings that would happen a few times during the day, and then the swings were open to the public to then swing on. And I'll just take off my screen share. So having it postponed, it's actually allowed myself and the collaborator Nick Green that we're working on to kind of take a step back from the work. So rather than having to completely repurpose and pivot this project, we've been able to step back from it and kind of say, well, how can we want to keep creating on it. We can't use the physicality and be in the studio that we usually are. So we've and reflecting on where the project's going, and also can we delve deeper into it and expand on it more. We have started talking with a sound artist about creating a sound installation as part of the public swinging. And as part of that, we want to both engage with our local neighbourhoods, like the hyperlocale that people are talking about, and the community WhatsApp groups that we are both involved in. I'm in Stirling and Nick's in Bowling in West Dunbartonshire. And kind of engaging with our communities on an artistic level, as well as just being being a neighbour, and spending time on the design. So we're going to be working with designer Becky Minto about not how can we bring it out next year, and as well as the world that we create, how can we make that world safe to what it is, and still interesting and be able to happen, because the interactive element was such a big part of what we wanted to do. So there's been two different things. We have, on both projects, we have learned a lot. We've had to pivot, but also it's given us the time to kind of really step back on this project and spend much more time developing a bit and thinking about it, and giving us an idea to try out different ways of working rather than so often relying on the physical. So that's exciting, but really we can't wait to get back out and just to experience that live, the live emotion and connection again. And also I'm just going to add into what Angie says about articulation, part of articulation and supporting circus, outdoor arts and physical performance in Scotland. So articulationarts.org, if you're in Scotland, please get in touch. So thank you, Neil, for having us here.
That was fantastic, and thank you for all the presenters in a very, very, very busy session, and really quite inspirational, and it's sort of really demonstrating the sort of very intense creative relationship between producers, programmers and artists, and that there are some positive things coming out of this. We're going straight into the breakout sessions. I'm making an arrangement for Zoe when she comes back to go into breakout 4, and if Louise Richard, who's the chair, will make space for you to make your presentation there. And the breakout sessions will happen until 3:45, after which we're coming back for a final roundup, and then on to all the fantastic live work which Serge has been organising. So thank you very much to everyone, and I'll look forward to seeing you in about 30 minutes.